Hi everyone, so I asked you guys to vote for which books you'd like to see me read and then review in August, and overwhelmingly, most requested book by far was 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. Now part of me wants to say that I wasn't interested in reading in this book at all and I felt forced to read it because of you guys, but one, I'm a book reviewer and this is a book that's being talked about a lot, and I'm the type of person who really likes to have strong opinions about something, and I don't think I can have a sound and based opinion about a book. A lot of people are stating their opinions about this book without actually having read it. So I did actually kind of want to read it even before you guys requested it, just so that I could have a concrete opinion about it. Also, I would like to go ahead and thank my good friend and subscriber Diana. She went ahead and emailed me 50 Shades of Grey because I was on the waiting list for actually over a month. And this is actually one of my coworkers. She lent it to me, and as you can tell, it's kind of falling apart. So it's a good thing I ended up having it on my computer. So after I finished it, I was sitting there and I was trying to rationalize how I was actually going to review this, because it's a bit difficult for me to separate myself from the fact that this is fan fiction. It was kind of impossible for me to read it like it was a book, and it's even more impossible for me to review it as if this is a book. So this isn't going to be a video where I'm going to go through plot and then characters and all of that and then rate it on a basis out of 5 stars. I'm basically just going to react to it and react to the phenomenon that is this book. It's interesting because there are definitely polarizing opinions on this book, and people seem to fall into 4 categories. You have the people who, mainly for religious reasons, just feel this book is morally wrong and just terrible. You have the people who, from almost sort of a feminist perspective, think this book is very degrading towards women. And then you have the people who think that this is a fantastic book and one of the best romance novels they've ever read, and it's reinvigorated their sex lives with their husbands. And finally, you have people like me who think that after having read it, the book is pretty terrible, it's pretty horribly written, the characters are very annoying and not very well thought out, but at the same time, it is entertaining. Who doesn't like reading some sex scenes every now and then? And if people want to read this, go ahead and let them, and don't stand in their way and make them feel degraded for wanting to read it. So clearly, I will go ahead and give a plot summary just in case somehow you have managed to go through these past few months without having to hear from someone what this book is about. Anastasia Steele is a 20-year-old near college graduate. She's an English major. She's just like Bellen in that she's fucking awkward. She doesn't seem to have a whole lot of redeeming qualities except for the fact that we're told again and again that she is very pretty. Her friend Kate, who is actually very vivacious and surprisingly interesting, is, I think, one of the writers for their school newspaper. So she unfortunately falls ill, so she sends Anastasia off to interview the very successful billionaire who is 27 years old, beautiful, and of course this is Christian Grey. In typical Bella Swan fashion, she trips and falls into his office. He immediately falls for her, stalks her, and instead of his fault being that he is a vampire, in this case it is that he is into BDSM. I think I said this before, but I was anticipating for the writing of this book to just be fairly atrocious, to not like the characters, but overall for it to be quite entertaining. That's what I thought it would be. That's actually a lot of what my subscribers told me when they were telling me to go ahead and read this book. They said, look, it's not very good, but it's entertaining. Just go ahead and give it a read and see what you think. I definitely also felt the same way the booktubinator did while he was reading it. I just despised Anastasia in particular so much, and I just hated hearing her speak, that I would actually look forward to the sex scenes just because I thought, well, 1, it's a sex scene, so why would I not want to read it? But 2, Anastasia probably won't be speaking very much because he prefers her not to speak when they're having sex, which is a bonus for me. I don't think 50 Shades of Grey is a phenomenon because it is anything new or revolutionary. I'm sure most of you are aware that erotic fiction has been around for hundreds, probably thousands of years. But what is interesting about 50 Shades of Grey that separates it from anything else in the romance section is the fact that for some reason this book is socially acceptable to read in public. At least from my experience, I see people openly talking about it in the workplace. A lot of people have been wondering, why has this book become so popular? Why has it sold more and faster? And I think some people, it was either the Hunger Games or Harry Potter that people are saying it sold actually faster. I think it stems from a couple things. One, it is Twilight fan fiction, so it did already have a following. Then some people picked it out and it almost started off as this taboo topic. And then eventually by word of mouth, it became kind of socially acceptable to talk about it. And I think a lot of people, not just women, felt a bit liberated in the fact that they could talk about sex scenes and books without having to feel ashamed. So when my coworkers who had been trying to get me to read this book for months found out I was reading it, they would constantly ask me, what page are you on? And I remember telling them I was on page 100, and if you read this, you know that means you're already up to some of the sex scenes. And I remember telling them I'm up to a page 100, and they said, oh, so you've gotten to the first sex scene. I remember all of them kind of circling around me and saying, you have no idea how far this is going to go. It's going to be crazy. You're not going to believe it. Actually, it got to the point where I was thinking, how far can this book go? What's he going to do? Fuck her in the eye? And after reading this, and keep in mind, it's not as if I'm constantly going into the romance section and reading books. I don't generally go there. I don't like romance novels, but I do read a lot of adult fiction, so I have read a lot of quite graphic sex scenes. And it's not that I'm saying this book is tame, but I was just, I guess, a bit surprised, not let down. It's not as if I wanted to read really hardcore BDSM scenes. But I don't know, I guess after reading this, my version of extreme sex scenes and other people's are just quite different, because really the farthest the sex scenes go in this book are just different formations of Anastasia being slapped and hit on the ass. They have sex in the bathroom, sex in the bedroom, sex on a desk, sex on a wall. I just don't understand what kind of the fervor around these sex scenes is. I was genuinely expecting to be, at least in some way, sort of disturbed. So I was a little bit confused as to why women were saying this book was reinvigorating their sex lives, when I don't think the sex scenes were anything that far out of the ordinary. But I think what's happened is because this book has become so popular, because a book that is erotica has become so popular, women who had never been introduced and probably never even read a sex scene are suddenly reading books like this and being introduced to things that they hadn't ever heard of before. I think the people who are saying, oh, you definitely need to read this, the sex scenes are crazy, are probably people who haven't read a lot of sex scenes or maybe watched porn or been on literotica. So to them, this really is changing their sex lives with their husbands, with their spouses, with their boyfriends, whatever. And for all of those people who are trying to make people feel shameful for reading this book, saying that this book is morally wrong, it's disdainful, it's horribly written, if people want to read it and have fun, if it's true that couples who haven't had sex in 5 years are for some reason having sex again after reading this book, then let it happen. So now I want to talk about the fact that people are saying this book is representative of a typical BDSM relationship. If you don't know what BDSM stands for, it stands for bondage, dominance, sadism, and masochism, I'm pretty sure. When I've seen people review this, I don't think they understand what BDSM actually is, and I don't understand what it is because I've ever had it. I just want to make that clear, but from what I do know, it's a relationship where both parties, male and female, female and female, male and male, whatever, are both equally interested in this type of relationship, and it's a relationship based on trust. That's what separates BDSM and some sort of negative, abusive relationship. That being said, I don't think 50 Shades of Grey should be looked at as a BDSM relationship. Anastasia Steele is only going through with this type of relationship because she is so attracted to Christian Grey. She's sort of acquiescing and taking part of this only because she's trying to earn his love, which is obviously a horrible thing to do. I think she's a very weak-willed character. She does get enjoyment out of the sex scenes, but she does think to herself constantly that this is not the type of relationship that she wants. So it's a very unbalanced sort of relationship, and only one person actually wants it to be a typical BDSM relationship. So he's never actually beating her in the book. It's just different variations, as they said, of him basically hitting her on the ass, tying her up, things like that. He's never choking her or doing anything to kind of that extent. What I think is actually the negative aspect of this relationship isn't really the sex. I think it's Christian's deep-seated issues of not wanting to be touched, of not being able to really fall in love with someone. But I get very annoyed when I see these 15-year-olds posting videos where they're not reviews of 50 Shades of Grey, because they obviously haven't read it, but they sit there up on their pedestal and they say, if you like being tied up during sex, or if you like being hit or having your hair pulled, there must be something psychologically wrong with you. If people consensually like being tied up, they like having their hair pulled, they like being gagged or slapped during sex, and this is something that they both equally enjoy, then I don't think we should make them feel bad for that. And I don't think that there's has to be these deep-seated psychological issues for someone to enjoy that. I do think that weird dichotomy comes out of the book, because obviously the sex scenes are what's most talked about. Even for author E.L. James, I'm sure these sex scenes are her idea of a fantasy. So I'm a bit unclear as to if James is trying to say that this type of relationship is bad or good. So overall, I do find the book entertaining. I don't think it was a waste of hours of my life to go ahead and read it. I would have enjoyed it honestly a lot more if I didn't fucking hate Anastasia Steele so much. She was kind of Bella Swan, but turned up a notch, just even more awkward and out of the loop. How the hell did she graduate college without an email address? That's what I want to know. I not understand that she needs to shave her legs and her armpits before going on a date. If she mentioned her inner goddess one more time. So overall, I would say if you want an entertaining read, if you just want to know what people are talking about and you enjoy reading sex scenes, because there are a lot of them, and I'm assuming most human beings like to read sex scenes, then go ahead and read it, and don't let anybody make you feel bad for wanting to. So that is my reaction to 50 Shades of Grey, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.